Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. I know you guys were not expecting me back so soon, but so I was thinking about the Boo Saga power scale and I was wondering, after the Boo Saga power scale, should I make power scale for like the other Dragon Ball media out there like Daima and Super and so on and so forth? And that led me to wondering um, whether the numbers I use for the Dragon Ball manga only will those work for the other media, because the other media aren't exactly faithful to the manga. Canon in Dragon Ball is very confusing. A lot of people have no clue what it is, and I've heard the basics, right? The basic opinion is that obviously the manga is canon, then Dragon Ball, the anime, Dragon Ball Z, the anime, Dragon Ball Super, the anime, are all canon. The Dragon Ball Super manga is also canon, and Dragon Ball Daima, the anime, is canon, right? And everything else is non-canon. That is the opinion of most of the people. But then there are quite a few people out there who are also arguing that other media like Dragon Ball GT is also canon. So what exactly is canon in Dragon Ball? And the problem is that even the things that people do consider canon, like Super and Daima, they contradict each other all the time, right? So it is so confusing. Like there are so many plot points that don't explain things that happen in the other anime, or like there are so many retcons, so many plot holes. It's just so a confusing mess. So what is the canon of Dragon Ball? I'm gonna explain it to you in this video. Also, I want to let you know that I'm going on a trip, so the next video might not come out for a few days, but I will try to create smaller videos if I can and schedule them so that you guys have something to watch while I'm away. I don't know, we'll see. It depends on how much time I have. But for now, enjoy this video. Please leave a like and subscribe. Let's get into the canon of Dragon Ball. I'm gonna explain it all. The canon of Dragon Ball. I'm gonna explain it all. Let's go. So a simple Google search can tell us that canon is the collection of books received by as genuine holy scriptures called the sacred canon, or general rule of moral and religious duty given by inspiration, the Bible, also any one of the canonical scriptures. And if you scroll down and go to this Reddit, which was 7 years ago, I think 7 years is the closest we can go to in order to get to the years when the word canon had started being used in fiction. So in this Reddit post, you can see that the first comment here is that I just wanted to point out that originally referred to the official text of the Bible as according to the Catholic Church, right? Canon refers to the events that officially happened in a fictional universe. So an official book by the author would be considered canon, but a fan-made story would be non-canon. It means it's officially true in the lore, not a fan-made edition. To expand on what others have said, take Harry Potter for example. There are 7 main books plus a few other books that are not part of the main storyline but still contribute information about the universe the story takes place in, such as the tales of Beedle the Bard and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. These works together are referred to as the canon of the universe. But what's important is this comment. The other responses are correct, but non-canon doesn't always mean fan-made. For example, Star Wars has a large number of officially licensed video games, comic books, novels, etc. with their own stories that take place in the Star Wars universe, but these stories were declared non-canon by Lucasfilm in 2014 when they announced the new sequel trilogy, because many existing stories would conflict with the new story that they were trying to tell. So based on what we read, these are the 2 main bullet points that more or less explains what the word canon means. Canon refers to official work by the creator or also by the owners. So like let's take Lucasfilm for example. We all know that George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars, but then there is other official work in the Star Wars universe made by people other than George Lucas, and it's official because the IP of Star Wars is now owned by Disney. Similarly, while some work may be official, the creators or owners can declare it as non-canon if they wish to do so, kind of like how Disney declared all the external Star Wars stories as legends, right? Because it did not fit in with the canon that they wanted. But the point to note is that George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, so once Disney became the owners, whatever they produce or whatever they declare as canon is now canon. And if they don't explicitly say that something is non-canon, you have to imagine that it is canon. So while some work may be official, the creator or owners can declare it as non-canon if they wish to do so, but until they don't, it is canon. So all of the Star Wars extended universe was considered canon when it was still owned by George Lucas, because George Lucas never said it's non-canon, and he himself was the guy who was signing approvals on, yeah, okay, you know what, you can write a story on this character, you can write a story on that character, so on and so forth. So he never really gave them the story, he never thought of it, but he did approve the fact that the story should be written, right? But then when Disney took over, they became the new owners, the sole owners, so whatever they decided as canon would be considered canon. Similarly, when we come to Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama basically was just giving Toei Animation permission to make these anime. Like, they're like, oh yeah, you want to make an anime on Dragon Ball Z? Go for it. You want to make a new anime, Dragon Ball GT? Okay, go for it. So yeah, at the time it was similar to how George Lucas was allowing people to make the content that is now known as Legends, right? But the main difference between the Dragon Ball franchise and the Star Wars franchise is that George Lucas sold all of Star Wars to Disney. Like, all the rights of Star Wars have completely been sold to Disney. So they are like the sole owners and they are completely in charge. With Dragon Ball, it was a little bit different. Dragon Ball was an IP that had shared ownership. So Toei Animation owned a percentage of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama owned a percentage of Dragon Ball, Funimation owned a percentage of Dragon Ball. So it was an IP that had shared ownership. So now the question is, if one party has more ownership over the other, so like let's say Toriyama has 60% ownership while Toei Animation only has 20%. So does that mean that only what Toriyama says is canon? Well, yes, but also no. I agree that while Toriyama is the original creator of Dragon Ball, what he says must always 100% be true. He is the original creator, after all. But the fact that canon refers to official work created by the creator, yes, but also by the owners. That means any work that is created by an organization that has ownership can also be considered canon, right? So what that basically means is the original pure unfiltered canon is the original Dragon Ball manga, starting from chapter 1 ending at chapter 519 with Oog. That is the untouched canon. That will always be the untouched canon. That will always be the main canon of Dragon Ball. Nobody can say or do anything about that. The anime Dragon Ball Z is just an adaptation of that manga. But the anime is owned by Toei Animation, which also owns Dragon Ball. And in case you don't know, Dragon Ball Z, the anime, has a lot of differences with the manga. There are quite a few plot points or characters such as Garlic Jr. and so on and so forth that have nothing to do with the manga, but they still show up. There's some filler content as well. But all of that needs to be considered canon, and I think by the vast majority of people it is considered canon, right? You do consider the Dragon Ball Z anime to be canon. But the fact remains that that anime is actually owned by Toei Animation. Even Dragon Ball GT, which is an original animation, was created as a sequel to Dragon Ball Z, the anime. Nobody ever said that GT was a sequel to the Dragon Ball manga. Whenever Dragon Ball GT was announced, it was always mentioned to be the sequel to the Dragon Ball Z anime. Most of the population widely disregards GT, they consider it non-canon, but they forget that GT has been made by Toei Animation, aka an owner. So while Dragon Ball GT does not have anything to do with the original canon, as in Toriyama's sole work, which was the Dragon Ball manga, that still does not mean that it is non-canon. It is official and it was never stated to be non-canon. Instead, everyone knows at this point that Toriyama actually loved GT. He gave GT its blessing, and he even wrote that GT is a grand side story of Dragon Ball. He never called it non-canon. The fact that he is calling it a side story means that he is acknowledging its existence. It means that he is okay with GT being part of the continuity. Not only that, but at that point when GT was being introduced, like when they were coming up with the ideas for GT, Toriyama was the one who gave them the thumbs up. Toriyama himself said in an interview that he wishes that he was the one who came up with the idea to turn Goku back into a kid, and that's exactly what they did for Dragon Ball Daima. Dragon Ball Daima was made for all those young people who used to watch Dragon Ball GT but are now grown up and want to watch Dragon Ball again but with their kids. If that's the sole reason why Dragon Ball Daima was made, right? And you know how heavily Toriyama was involved in Dragon Ball Daima. He was also involved with Nakatsuru. Nakatsuru is the guy who used to work on the Dragon Ball anime. He worked on Dragon Ball GT. He is the guy who designed the Super Saiyan 4 transformation, the original one. So Dragon Ball GT was never disregarded nor called non-canon by any of the creators. It was not called non-canon by Toriyama. It was not called non-canon by Toei Animation, nor by Funimation. And as you can see here, they can declare it as non-canon if they wish to do so, but until they don't, it is canon. And just so you want proof that Toei Animation and Funimation are owners of Dragon Ball, well, what better proof do we have than this legendary sentence by the creators of Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball GT are all owned by Funimation, Toei Animation, Fuji TV, and Akira Toriyama. Please support the official release.
Please support the official release. Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT are both considered official releases. We can also go on to the Dragon Ball Z movies. The Dragon Ball Z movies are also considered canon because they're made specifically by Toei Animation. And Akira Toriyama at that point always used to do whatever he can to not clash his story with the movies. For example, did you know that Vegito was originally supposed to be called Gogeta, but he was not called Gogeta because Toei Animation called him and told him that they're making a fusion character for Goku and Vegeta and that they're gonna call him Gogeta. So originally in the Buu saga, Goku and Vegeta were supposed to do the fusion dance and turn into Gogeta. But then because Toei Animation told Toriyama that they are introducing Gogeta in a movie, he respected that and decided to create an alternate fusion method and called it Vegito. So in that sense, Toei Animation and Akira Toriyama were both working on their respective canons of Dragon Ball. So they are two different canons, but both of them are official and both of them are canon. They are not considered non-canon. When we get to Dragon Ball Super, we know that Toriyama used to create main plot notes. He used to give bullet points. This will happen, and this will happen. And those things that were mentioned have to happen no matter what. But the way they happen was completely dependent on Toyotaro for the manga and Toei Animation for the anime, which is why the Dragon Ball Super anime is so much different from the Dragon Ball Super manga. But that doesn't mean that the manga is canon and the anime is not. Just because they're different doesn't mean it's not canon. Everyone knows that the Dragon Ball Super anime is canon. Everyone considers it to be canon. Everyone considers the manga to be canon as well, even though it is different to the anime. And you guys are totally right about that. Dragon Ball Super is canon. But again, if Dragon Ball Super the anime is canon, that means Dragon Ball GT the anime should also be canon, as both are made by Toei Animation, the owners, along with help from Akira Toriyama. It is true that Akira Toriyama helped way more for the creation of the Super story because he was actually giving plot outlines. For GT, he helped create the character designs for a few characters, especially Goku, Trunks, and Pan. And he also designed the planets that they go to in the Black Star saga. But that's mostly it. The amount he helped in Super was way more than the amount he helped in GT. Doesn't change the fact that he gave GT's blessing, agreed with the idea, was completely okay with the anime going back to traditional OG Dragon Ball style, a journey, right, an adventure. The only reason people call GT non-canon is because Super was created and it does not fit into the GT continuity, and because GT was hated way more than Super was. But if I have to be honest, GT really was not that bad. The Black Star saga, yes. That saga is atrocious. It's horrible. I don't like it at all. But the moment... Okay, I'll tell you. In the Black Star saga, the Legic episode, amazing. I was totally on board with that. And from the moment General Rildo appears on screen, GT has been great. The Baby saga to this day is the best Dragon Ball saga, I think. In my mind, it's the best Dragon Ball saga. Super Saiyan 4, best transformation ever. I still prefer the OG Super Saiyan 4 to the new one. Okay? Then, yeah, Android 17 arc, the Super Android 17 arc was not that great, but it wasn't bad either. It was certainly way better than the Black Star saga, right? And of course, the Shadow Dragon saga, great concept, poor execution, but it gave us Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, so I can't complain, honestly. The point I'm trying to make is that because Dragon Ball is a shared IP owned by Toei Animation, Funimation, Fuji TV, Akira Toriyama, so on and so forth, everything that is created by these parties is considered canon. Now, if I were to write a Dragon Ball story, yeah, that's 100% non-canon because I'm not Akira Toriyama and nor do I belong to Toei Animation. So if I write it, it's definitely 100% non-canon, it's fan fiction. But if Toei Animation does it, it's canon. I'm sorry, it does not align with the original continuity of Dragon Ball. Nothing aligns with the original continuity of Dragon Ball. Even the Dragon Ball Z anime does not align with its own manga, right? But because Dragon Ball is a shared IP, it has different continuities, okay? Different side stories. GT is a side story, Super is a side story, Super Manga is a side story. The movies are side stories. Hell, the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z anime are side stories. Even Dragon Ball Kai is a side story because even Kai has the Garlic Jr. arc in it. So the one true canon is the Dragon Ball manga, but all these other anime series are also canon. 100%, they're canon. So as much as you guys want to say that Dragon Ball GT is not canon, I'm sorry to tell you folks, it is. And you know the most funny and absurd thing is that Super Dragon Ball Heroes, the anime, since it's made by Toei Animation, technically is also canon. On top of that, the Super Dragon Ball Heroes manga is literally written by Toyotaro, right? And after Akira Toriyama's passing, Toyotaro is the guy who is his successor. So anything that was created by Toyotaro technically should also be considered canon now, right? Ever since Dragon Ball Super was a thing, everything that Toyotaro wrote can be considered canon. So now we can do a very interesting thing. Now that we know that Dragon Ball has multiple continuities, multiple canons, we can identify the different continuities or like the different side stories in the Dragon Ball canon. So you are a Dragon Ball fan, or if you are someone who wants to get into Dragon Ball and you want to watch and read Dragon Ball, what are the different continuities, right? So I have listed all the different Dragon Ball continuities that you can read or watch, and I have listed them down in order. Starting with the first continuity, you have the original Dragon Ball manga and then Dragon Ball Daima. Dragon Ball Daima is the only original animation created by Toei Animation, which does not contradict anything in the manga, and that is probably because Akira Toriyama was working on it 24/7. Daima is basically Akira Toriyama's baby, right? So it makes sense. I don't think there's anything in the Daima anime that is contradicting anything from the OG Dragon Ball manga. So yeah, that's your first continuity. Then your second continuity is Dragon Ball, the anime, Dragon Ball Z anime, the Dragon Ball Z movies and specials, and Dragon Ball GT. So in the beginning, you only had two continuities, the Dragon Ball manga and then this anime continuity, right? Then we have Dragon Ball Kai. Dragon Ball Kai I have included as a separate continuity because while it is adapting the manga as much as possible, it still included filler arcs like the Garlic Jr. arc and so on and so forth. So Dragon Ball Kai takes place in an alternate verse where the movies, the specials, and Dragon Ball GT does not take place. So you can skip Dragon Ball Kai if you want. You can even like replace Dragon Ball Z with Dragon Ball Kai here. These two are interchangeable, so it's not really gonna make much of a difference that way. Then we move on to the Dragon Ball Super manga. The reason why I have not put the Super manga ahead of Dragon Ball Z or the Dragon Ball manga is because the Super manga contradicts the OG manga and it also contradicts the Z anime. And the one main reason why the Super manga contradicts the Dragon Ball Z anime as well as manga is because of Bardock. In the Dragon Ball manga as well as the anime, Bardock has a completely different design. It's our green armor, red bandana, badass Bardock. And Dragon Ball Super, the manga, completely changed Bardock. and because of that we know it's in a separate continuity. Then obviously we have the Dragon Ball Super anime, which is different from the Super manga, but even they changed Bardock. And when I say Super anime, I'm also talking about the Broly movie as well as the superhero movie, because those are also part of the Super anime continuity. Then we have the Super Dragon Ball Heroes manga for the video game and the Super Dragon Ball Heroes anime, because both the anime and manga are also a little bit different. So if you want a watch order for all the continuities, I would suggest you start with the Dragon Ball Z anime continuity, the GT anime continuity. So you start with OG Dragon Ball, move to Dragon Ball Z. You can switch Z with Kai if you want. It's the same story with less filler. So you can switch these two. That's okay. Then you watch the Z movies and specials, all right, and then you watch Dragon Ball GT, and then you watch Dragon Ball GT: A Hero's Legacy, and that is like the first continuity that I think you should watch. After that, you should move on to the Dragon Ball Super manga. Okay, once you have read the Dragon Ball Super manga, you can read the Dragon Ball Super anime. No, you can watch the Dragon Ball Super anime. So now you have completed three main continuities, right? After which I suggest you go through the main original continuity, which is the Dragon Ball manga and Dragon Ball Daima. And finally, just for fun, you can read the Super Dragon Ball Heroes manga and the Super Dragon Ball Heroes anime. Because in Heroes, all these different continuities collide and it's chaos. So like that's just a fun watch, okay? Honestly, don't take that too seriously. So the main point that I'm trying to make is that everything that you see here is canon. They're all taking part in different continuities, but it is canon. That is the canon of Dragon Ball as of right now, okay? So you can consider all of these as side stories or alternate timelines, and we know that alternate timelines do exist because Future Trunks himself creates the butterfly effect and creates alternate timelines, right? So we can say that the whole GT verse is an alternate timeline. Super is an alternate timeline. Super is alternate, by the way. I'm just saying. Super is not like the main Dragon Ball universe timeline. Super is an alternate timeline. Even the Super anime is an alternate timeline. And then Super Dragon Ball Heroes is just all these timelines merging together kind of shit, you know? So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. As I mentioned before, I will be going on vacation for a few days, so I might not be able to release too many videos. I'm trying to schedule a few videos beforehand if I can. If not, well, just too bad. But regardless, I will be back to making videos once I'm back from my trip. Alright, see ya. Thunderbolt out.